So my guest today is Keith Ferrazzi. Hi, Keith.
Hi, good to see you. And I'm reading chat, so I'm excited to interact with the audience if people want to say hi.
That's great. So I'll do a very short official introduction, and then after that, we'll talk about Keith's latest book, which is the topic of Mindvalley Book Club as ever. So Keith Ferrazzi is the #1 best-selling, New York Times best-selling author of the book Never Eat Alone, and a whole lot of other books, by the way, including Leading Without Authority, Who's Got Your Back. I have to actually check not to mess up the names. Also competing in the new age, in the new world of work. In addition to that, Keith is an executive coach to not just Fortune 500 companies, but actually Fortune 50 companies, including the National Bank, even national government, and big unicorn corporations. He has also contributed as an author or a columnist in such media as Wall Street Journal, Inc. magazine. I have to check again, just not to mess it up. Harvard Business Review, the Wall Street Journal, Fortune, Fast Company, and so on. But I think the most important thing about Keith is that he's one of our beloved Mindvalley authors. So Keith has 2 quests in Mindvalley, and if you haven't checked his quest, go and check it after this interview. Actually, 2 quests. And if you have, then welcome, because here you'll get to see Keith live in real world. So welcome, Keith, to Mindvalley, virtual stage.
Thanks so much. I'm really excited today. Anytime I get to dip into the Mindvalley audience, it's a real blessing.
Thank you. And if I have missed something about your bio, which I think I might have, just
don't even worry. It's all good. It's all good.
Well,
I've been around for a long time.
From personal experience, I can also add that Keith is an amazing dinner partner, by the way. It's a dinner company. So if you ever have a chance, then definitely use it. And we are meeting today actually to discuss Keith's latest book, which just came out. I only have the cover like this, as usual, Never Lead Alone. And that's what we're going to be talking about. So I want to jump straight into the conversation about the book, because that's, a main topic of Mindvalley Book Club. And the book, in essence, is about shifting the focus from always looking at the leader to seeing the value of the team. And I think I really like this quote, which I want to read out just to set the tone for the conversation. Upgrading teams and what it means to be a great teammate is one of the least curated and under-leveraged opportunities for accelerating business outcome today. So that's, in essence, what the book is about. So if you have read the book, great. If you haven't read the book, we'll share the links in the interview. But I want to say that this is a very value-packed book, which probably, I was thinking before going online that if I were to characterize it in a short way, then it's thousands of dollars worth of coaching in a hardcover. So thank you for the...
Look, that was absolutely the intention. For 25 years, I've been coaching high-performing teams, whether that's startups, whether that's Fortune 50s, and as you mentioned, even governments now. And we have curated what it is that we do to coach teams to transform, and I put it in the book. It's as if I'm training you to be a coach of a team. Mm-hmm. And every chapter of the book focuses on a shift that a group of people need to make to be productive in working together. Now, I want to make one point clear. I know some of us might be leaders of organizations of one, just our own. Mm. And if that's the fact, you still have a team. If you go back to my original quest around networking, and also around leadership, what I'm trying to get people to recognize is that the universe of people that you work with, your clients, your vendors that you may have, like your PR firm or your marketing firm, and even friends that are lifelines to you, who work together, care about each other's business, give each other enthusiasm and courage. That is your team. So I want you to think about this book in what is the social dynamic? What's the contract of a group of people working together to achieve a mission? And that mission could be a charity, it could be a philanthropic mission, it could be your business.
So, with that kind of priming, I did want to ask you guys a question, but now you'll give the right answer to it. I wanted to ask if you do have a team at work, or if you tend to work alone, but now you know the answer. Even if you're a soul warrior out there, you do have people in your team. But to Keith, I want to ask actually, so there is a terminology in your book which is a little unfamiliar to people who maybe are not very familiar with your teachings. But what does teamship mean? Because this is central
originally
theme.
The book was going to be just titled Teamship, because I wanted to make some focus away just from the subject of leadership. I think that as leaders, we have spent so much time being asked to put the burden on our shoulders. And the reality is, it's about time for leaders to expect more from their teams. And so what I want you to do is to think about the importance of what the team needs to do to meet leadership. What does the team need to do to become a shared leader with you in your organization, in your mission? So I'll give you, for instance, you have a group of people working together, and if they work for you, if they report to you, then you're supposed to give them feedback. But what about a group of people working together that give each other feedback? What about a group of people working together that hold each other accountable? What about a group of people working together that keep each other's energy strong and provide resilience in difficult times? That's what teamship is. Teamship is a shift away from thinking that leadership is hub and spoke to you as an individual, and the better focus on the role of the team supporting each other to achieve the mission.
So when you say that it's time for leaders to expect from their teams more, it doesn't mean work harder, but it actually means trust them with certain aspects of achieving success.
Yeah, there are 10 shifts you as a leader need to make, and 3 or 4 of them are very important. The most important shift is to get the group to agree that it won't hold anything back, that it will have full transparency and full candor. Most social contracts among people working together, I talk about social contracts in the book. I think, a lot of people talk about the culture of a company. I like to use a social contract, because a contract is something that can be specified and engineered, whereas a culture feels like it's either there or it isn't. So I want to talk about a social contract. And when you have a group of people working together, and again, I want everybody to think about each of you is a person with a mission, and your team are those that you want to enlist to make your mission happen. That's your team. So as we have this conversation today, your team are those you want to enlist. You may not have even enlisted them yet, but you want to enlist, right? Now, the next question is, what is their agreement with each other? Do they believe that in their workings to achieve your mission, do they believe it's their mission? Like, are they sharing your mission? By the way, we're not only in one team. Most of us are in multiple teams. The biggest thing I can get a leader to do when I say, how's your team doing? What they should ask is, which one? Because around every set of OKRs, KPIs, objectives, and goals, there should be a team formed to accelerate the achievement of that work. Now, among that group, do we all agree that we will challenge each other? Now, challenging each other has different levels. You have a level of challenging around ideas. That tends to be the easiest. You have a level of challenge around performance. That's not easy. When peers challenge each other for performance. You have a level of challenge around competencies, where people need to learn and grow. And you have even a level of challenge around style. Does my style shut you down? Does it lift you up, etc.? Now, in those 4 areas of feedback, does the team believe that speaking openly in the room and challenging each other is throwing each other under the bus, or is it committing to not let each other fail? And that's what we're trying to achieve, an agreement among a group of people that they won't let each other fail.
So, of course, I have a lot of questions coming, but I guess the first one is the social contract or social agreement that you're talking about. There is some kind of silent agreement, whether you're aware of that or not, I understand, right? And the question that you begin by trying to understand what is that silent agreement in your particular team.
Yeah, and that's why I move away from the word culture to the word contract, social contract. Because to me, a culture is this unspoken way that we are. And that's a very difficult thing to, it's interesting when you're at a hotel and you put a do not disturb sign on the door and they still ring the bell. I'm not exactly sure what one does with that, right? So here I am in Chicago, and go ahead and put it in a text. What should my reaction be when in a hotel room and the bell rings, even though you have a do not disturb sign on? Anyway, so the point of this social contract is it is usually unspoken, and that's the problem, which is why I broke the shifts down into very explicit 10 shifts. The first few are the most important. Moving from conflict avoidance to candor, from conflict avoidance to candor. And that's a shift. And normally conflict avoidance is what teams do. And I'm suggesting that they move to transparency and candor, that the social contract has changed. The other thing is, who do you expect to get your coaching from? Do you expect it only from your boss, the person who pays you, or do you expect it from each other? There's a person that maybe your community is aware of. His name is Peter Diamandis. Peter is one of my best friends. He wrote a book called Abundance. He runs Singularity University and X Prize, etc. Peter is on my team. He and I are going this weekend, hanging out with my fiance and his wife in Palm Springs. I help him with his conferences. He helps me. He's helped me incubate an entirely new business called Beyond Connections, and like he's bringing a futuristic view of the world around technology to me, and he is my high-tech futurist teammate, and I'm his emotionally connected, community-oriented teammate. So I'm always helping him dial up the connectivity of his followership. And he's always helping me look around corners around how is AI going to play into this? How do you create a more scalable, technologically driven business, etc. Like I said, I started a new business called Beyond Connections, and he was he was the incubator of that. So I look at all of you, and I ask the question, who's your team? Who is your Peter? Who is helping you look around corners technologically? And that's not a thing that's typically spoken, right? That's sort of, it's called networking, it's called friends, it's called whatever. I want us to the book gets very deliberate on the steps to make to become a high-performing team.
It's for those of you who are planning to read it, in case you feel that you have actually a way to influence the dynamics in your team, I think it's one of those books which you will first read and then you will start rereading it in parts to digest it and go deeper, because it is fast-paced. It's very, very packed with practical information, also with real-world examples. And talking of Peter Diamandis, you will see quite a lot of remarkable names there. But I want to maybe make a little jump when it comes to the book, but not a jump in our conversation. So in the book, you also mentioned that, I can't avoid this topic, you just dropped it anyway, AI, that AI is also reshaping who our teams are. What does that mean in the context of teamship?
So the first step is to recognize let me actually step back and share with you a model for AI to think about. At the basic level of AI, you have tools that are being created, generative AI tools that you need to learn how to adopt and adapt to do the work that you do. So, how do you use generative AI to, I'm a book writer. How do I use it for my research? It's so amazing. I met a woman the other day who wanted to write a book on the role of women in history as leaders of historical change. And I was like, wow, what an interesting subject. And she was a VIP. She's the number 2 at one of the largest software networking companies in the world. And I left and said, by the way, one of the things I always try to do is I always try to be extraordinarily generous to people I want to get to know. And I walked away from that and I went to my generative AI tool. I used Perplexity. And I wrote in there, I said, okay, tell me the most important women in history. And it gave me 5 names. And I said, and they were all in the last 100 years. I said, go back 100 years and give me, in the period of time from this to this, what are the most prominent women and what did they do? And I kept going back. I went back 10 times until I got to the point of prehistoric women and what was the role of prehistoric women. Anyway, I'm doing all of this. And at the end of it, I said, here's a woman's name that wants to write a book on this subject. Rewrite all of these from the perspective of this woman's name and her points of view she's already articulated in the world. And I went, and I said, just give me a 20-page treatment for the book. Boom. And I sent it to her. And I was like, here's the starting point for you to think about for your book. And it was, it's like, now all of a sudden that would have taken me in the past. I usually, when I write my books, I have a researcher, I have a co-writer, and then I have myself. And sometimes there's other people on the project, like experts. I got all of those in my AI partner. Right now, of course, I'll still need a writing partner who's a real elegant writer. And I'll still have other interviews. But I was just blown away. Now, that's the basic level of generative AI being a teammate, right? Let me take it to the next level. We've got to start blowing apart the things we do, fundamentally blowing them apart and reconfiguring them with new ways of working with AI as a partner. Because it could be that the role that you have doesn't even need to exist anymore. The role you have might disappear and you need to find a different role to add value at a higher level while we're re-engineering an entire workflow. So for instance, if somebody is an analyst in supply chain, that role probably doesn't exist anymore. It's not like, how do you use generative AI to make your role better? It's, how does generative AI, blow away that role fully? And what would your role be in a newly configured world which has elevated the workflows and changed the workflows? So the second stage is engineering entire new ways of working. And then the third, of course, is new business models, sort of what Netflix did to Blockbuster with digital first. It created a whole new business model. So anyway, that's the model to be thinking about in terms of the levels of how AI changes your life and becomes a very different teammate, and work gets fundamentally reconfigured. I don't know. That's probably a little bit more information than you chose to get.
It was a little more than in the book, but I want to summarize with this one quote, which I fortunately found because I have a lot of quotes from your book. In one sense, the concept of teammate will take on a whole new perspective. It's about how we co-create with other personas, be they human or AI. And I think this is brilliant. Sorry, I got so excited. I have to cough now. But, I want to ask you something else. Another thing which I've noticed about your book, it has a lot of data and statistics. about what's happening right now, because obviously you work with a lot of teams. So what's your perspective? How far are we from this idea of teamship currently
So
at this?
far away. So far away. So far away. We are, unfortunately, today we sit in a world where I've caught it from you.
Sorry.
we sit in a world where the basics of high performing teams is still look like the hub and spoke autocratic bureaucratic leadership of 50 years ago. This is a major shift. This is a major shift. And I was talking to a company called ADP, and ADP is a technology company that is building software for the reengineering of the future of work. And I'm excited about the fact that there are organizations out there trying to re-engineer the future of work with technology, but many technology companies are paving over the cow paths and just putting technology over old ways of working. And that's very sad to me, because what we're talking about here, if I had a graphic, it would be a spider web, which is that the future of an org chart looks like a spider web. It's a networked group of people working together. Some are inside your company, some are outside your company. And we've got to start imagining a networked world that, and that's why, by the way, it's not odd that the guy who wrote the book on networking is the guy writing the book on teams, because networking principles now apply to productivity and getting work done. What I was really saying to you at the beginning by saying, what is a high performing team? It starts with asking the question, what is my network? And how do I treat them like a team? How do I form a team out of my network?
So you mentioned in your book, it might have been in a different context, about how quite a lot of teams were forced to actually reinvent the way we work during COVID, but unfortunately it was unsustainable. So did we fall back from that time when we were actually forced to rethink our communication?
We didn't. We just moved. We moved where we worked, not how we worked. And what I realized when I wrote the book and I stood back, every chapter of the book is grounded with a hero's story of somebody who did that very well and implemented practices that we could replicate. And what I realized was the reality that every one of those people did a part-time job. And they said, not only is my job to run this company, but my job is to rethink and re-engineer how I run the company. Very few leaders do that. And they don't really, and the HR department isn't geared to re-engineering workflows. If the big workflow changes that have happened in the world, back in the 80s and 90s, there was a phase of re-engineering manufacturing called Total Quality Management, Six Sigma, TQM. And that was engineered by manufacturing engineering wanting to do manufacturing better. Software engineering created Agile, how to work in short sprints. And we should talk about Agile for your audience today. But, the ability to re-engineer work is a real rare leadership competency. Most people are just falling
comes from
in.
a leader, not from HR department.
Yeah. Well, I'm working with a lot of HR departments and making them realize it should be coming from them.
Implementation probably will require a lot of support, because for you guys who are interested in this book has a lot of practices. It has diagnostic questions. In the end, Keith even says, you can take the book and actually go through the process. It will take you some time, or you can turn to Keith and he can help your team to go through that. So it is very, very practical, but it is a mammoth task. Now, what I noticed about the hero stories in your chapters is that they are actually all exemplified by very, very successful companies. That means that these changes actually do bring remarkable results. Yeah. Now, since you asked to talk about Agile, so the question I will ask, So how do you, so agile, the idea of agile coding was, or it came from IT departments, from coders.
Yeah,
How do you
yeah.
implement it on a team? Because you're not talking about technology in this book.
No, we're just talking, we're talking about how we get things done. Excuse me. We're talking about how we get things done. And that needs, so in a world that's very volatile, where everything's changing, which is the world we're living in today, tariffs, everything else that's going on, we need to work in short sprints of work. And then at the end of that sprint, let's call it 1 month, for the coming year, all of you should be engineering your work on short monthly sprints. You have a goal for this year. I understand. You have big projects. I understand. Break them down into, okay, what are we going to do in the first month? What will we have achieved in the first month that we know if we do achieve that, we will be on our way to achieving the 1-year goal? At the end of the month, you pause and you get all of your team, broadest, most inclusive, most curious individuals around the conversation. You don't have to get them in a meeting. I have an entire chapter in chapter 6 talking about how do we engage our team outside of meetings. And the idea is you get that team together in an asynchronous fashion, and you say, hey, look, I'm going to send you a video, and the video is going to be 5 minutes. Here's what I achieved this month. Here's where I struggled this month. And here's what I'm planning to do next month. And based on that, everybody responds, here's what you're missing. Here's an idea that you might benefit from. And here's some help I'd like to offer. So you've now engaged in a highly candid, highly curious way. And at the end of every month, you're getting this massive feedback that helps you then adjust. And then what you do is when you get all that feedback, you're like, okay, well, originally I said what I was going to do next month was this. I'm going to tweak that. I'm going to change that. It's going to be this. That's agile in operation. Short monthly sprints. And at the end, I call that process stress testing. It's in chapter 3. You get the work you're doing stress tested by a group of brilliant individuals, and it's fantastic. Yeah. By the way, you and I want to talk to your audience for a second. I'm noticing in chat some really good comments.
Yes,
very good. What's that?
Yeah, go ahead. I just can't see the text because I'm very far from my computer.
Yeah. So I'm noticing some really great comments. I would argue a couple of things. First of all, it's one of the best ways to learn is to be engaged and to interact with the content like this. So I applaud and advocate those who are doing it. But you're also, you should be building your brand there too. Like, you should say, here's what I do. Here's who I am. And here's an idea, or here's a thought. So what a great opportunity to build the Mindvalley community in chat while we're engaging in the comments. And I see, is Alex with Mindvalley? I see Alex. Let me see. What's Alex's last name? Gita? Alex Gita? No, I guess not. I say that because Alex is just really prolific here. It almost looks like Alex is playing a role for the group to serve us by hitting critical points, which I love. And I don't know, Alex seems like a really cool person Alex, for us to get to know.
Come over to all our interviews.
Yeah, no, I mean, I just want to note
request.
I just want to note that in this new world of working, you have this whole way of engaging that you didn't used to have before. If we were sitting in a Mindvalley meeting, at a conference center, we wouldn't have this venue available for us. And Alex's insights that are brilliant insights going on in his or her head wouldn't be seen. So anyway, I just wanted to encourage the team to build a little bit of your brand while we're doing this.
Can I ask a question, which is a little bit maybe I would say critical in that whole discussion, because you said that one of the most important shifts is the shift to candour, but this is a very hard shift for a human being just in life, not just at work. anywhere, because we are conditioned to be afraid of actually criticism or other opinions, and very often feedback is perceived as a criticism, where it might be it's not meant like this. So in your experience, because you've worked with so many amazing teams, what is like the hardest part about it, and what do you do with people who just maybe can't overstep their shyness, or just
By the way, I just wanted to point out Mary's got some really good feedback on what she does with her monthly agile sprints and how that works, which I think is great, in the chat. So look, let me take you back a little to make you rethink the concept of feedback. When we were growing up, feedback was usually a directive. When your parents gave you feedback, they weren't giving you advice. They were telling you what to do. Sit up straight, stop eating that way, don't touch that. You know, that was a directive. Then you went to school and you got directives from your teachers, you got directives from your coaches, you got directives. So basically, anytime you were conditioned that when you got feedback, somebody was telling you what to do. Well, in the world that I'm suggesting, in the world of teamship, you're not giving directives. You're giving each other the benefit of your insight and your input, but you don't have the right to expect that they should do it. It's just your wisdom, and they own the wisdom and the analysis and the action. They're not your boss. You're not their boss. So when I work with a team, what I'm saying to a team is get over yourselves. You don't have the right to give directive to your peers. What you do have the right, and you actually have the mandate and the obligation, is to not withhold your truth. Trust that they'll do what they want to with it. They can ignore it. You can even say that. So, you know, what I teach teams to do is to say, if you want to give each other feedback, say it like this. I'd like to give you an observation that is just my observation. I really encourage you to triangulate it with others. You can throw it out. It's do whatever you want to with it, but it's an observation I'd like to make, and I'd like to give it to you to benefit you. Now, in the olden days, you would criticize in private and praise in public. And I could see that if you're conditioning a team to start to do this, it might be beneficial to try to do this privately at the beginning, but ultimately you should be doing it publicly. Because if I say to Alex, I'd like to give you a piece of feedback. I feel that you should be more aggressive with telling people who you are, because your insights are great. And I don't know who you are. I don't know what you do. I don't know how I can help you. I'd like to make that suggestion to you. Now, that feedback to Alex is given to Alex as a gift. And if I say that out loud here, somebody might type in, "Hey, Alex, I feel differently. I love your humility. I think it's great that you position yourself the way you do." Whatever. It's like the ability for me to critique in public allows the team to triangulate and get to a better answer. Whereas if I only critiqued in private, then there wouldn't be the crowdsourcing insight and the analysis that I'm suggesting is needed. So,
So connected to that, I have a question, because this is not the only paradigm shift in the book, obviously.
No, in fact, by the way, every chapter has a paradigm shift.
A paradigm shift, yes.
Yeah, there's 10 of them.
So I actually even wrote out a few of your quotes about criticize in private and praise in public, because I found them very exciting. What I wanted to talk about, or maybe ask you to talk about, is this idea that, the more people are taking part in the discussion, the less efficient it is. In your book, you keep saying that actually the more the better. And I know diversity is a little maybe lower in the contents of your book, but I was very, very intrigued by that part.
Say that again, in terms of diversity.
Well, diversity, I just wanted to ask you also about diversity, but I just threw it into this question as well, because I feel that we talk about diversity a lot, but I don't think that it is quite happening yet.
Well,
Sometimes it's token diversity, diversity is
yeah.
there, but the decisions are still
We
made.
want to do the diversity question, or which
No,
question?
let's do the more opinions, the better.
So, and so the question that you're asking is, getting more opinions is better, or getting more?
Yeah.
Okay, right. So
I think it was in the part about meetings where you were talking about meetings. It was an amazing part too.
Yeah, no, and I'll tell you how that ties into diversity, so we can bring it together. In the olden days, people thought that if you had bigger meetings, it would lend to bad decisions because everybody had a voice. It wasn't clear. Consensus became the operating system, and you wouldn't have bold outcomes. That has a mindset associated with it that everybody's voice in the room has to be taken into the decision, and it doesn't. If you have a shift that says, I want to get 100 bold ideas on the table, and then a decision maker will analyze those and pick the best and run with the boldest, or the group of the boldest, then you don't get consensus. Consensus is something you fall into because of an assumption that if you ask people's points of view, you have to take it all. And that's why you get mush. A dog, they say a dog's breakfast of solution. The answer is you need to embrace broad inclusion of everyone's voice. I want everyone's voice. The average meeting of 12 people, 4 people think they're heard. If you use asynchronous collaboration, meaning you collaborate in documents, you ask bold questions, people, let's say before a meeting, let's say we're falling behind in sales. Before a meeting, you send a spreadsheet out. It's a shared document, like a Google Doc. And you ask everybody, write in there what you think the real problem is, and a bold solution to fix it. Okay, now everybody writes that. 10 out of 12 people will feel fully heard now, because you've given your bold input in advance, not in a room where only the extroverts get a chance to speak. Now, when you come into the meeting, you can have read all of that and be like, boom, we're going to land the plane and decide on this. And so, if you look at DEIB, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, let's break those words down. Diversity is getting diverse opinions, diverse points of view into a decision. I suggest that it's easier in an asynchronous format to get more points of view. Like I said, at the end of your monthly sprint, you send a video out to 20 people, you get 20 different points of view. That's a diverse set of opinions. It's also more inclusive because you're not just collaborating in your silo and keeping it tight and then going and getting buy-in. Buy-in is bullshit. It means you're selling your ideas to somebody. I want them in the co-creation process, which is more inclusive, more diverse, which should lead to bolder ideas if you get people a chance to be bold and candid and courageous in their input. Now, the next step is to make sure that the collaboration is safe, and that's where belonging comes in. I have an entire chapter talking about how teams need to build purposeful relationships, how you share vulnerably what you're struggling with, which breeds empathy and care, how you do energy checks so that people can take care of each other and have a social contract of that. That is going to be the greatest tipping point to belonging. So now I've said you've got diversity, you've got inclusion, you've got belonging, and all of that it happens in the work. I think that one of the challenges with DE&I is that it didn't align itself to delivering stronger work products. It was more a program of equity than it was a program of accelerating business outcomes through diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Now, the one thing that stands out, though, is everything I've just said is, where do we put the conversation of equity? And, you know, and I think that is a every company has to boldly look at itself and say, if I'm a consumer packaged goods companies and I'm creating potato chips, and I don't have anybody in my company from the Mexican community, and what kind of product am I creating for Southwestern, United States that's heavily, Hispanic oriented? What kind of business am I going to be creating? We've got to equity is, and making sure that we have all voices in the melting pot of the world that we're living in is so important. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I can totally relate as a woman for whom sometimes the products are produced not by women who know our problems. So I kind of hear what you're saying about, do we have anyone to actually speak for that? Audience. I think, again, I will probably butcher your quote, but it was somewhere in the beginning of your book about how we have to, or maybe it was in the end, about the values. We have to be the values of those people with whom we coexist in this world. Maybe I'll find it, not to butcher it. You know what? Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time and we'll have to be wrapping up. So I want to ask a question which I like to ask by the end of my interviews. But first, guys, this is the book. You will find it probably in the bookshops, I believe, in US at least. If not, go on Amazon and we'll share the link. Get the book, read it with your teammates, read it again. And now the question, for those who do not want to read, for whatever reason, are there 1 to 3, it might be 1, 2, or 3 tips, what they could do right now, they personally could do right now to start shifting the dynamics in their team?
Well, first of all, if you don't like to read, the book is on Audible. Also, if you go to my LinkedIn, there are lots of articles that I've written on this subject. If you just search Keith Ferrazzi teamship, there's a lot of articles out there around the principles. I think number 1, in chapter 6, redefine how you think of his team. Do a relationship action plan. It's something I've talked about in a lot of my books. It's a purposeful definition of who really is your team. That's number 1. Number 2, have a verbal conversation with that group around, what is our social contract? We will be each other's coaches. Make sure that the team knows that it will be each other's coaches, and then do stress testing. There's an article in Fortune magazine I wrote recently on the subject. If you do Keith Ferrazzi stress testing, you'll find a bunch of pieces in HBR and others, but it's just really digging in on having a social contract and then activating that level of candor with each other.
Thank you for that. And before I'll conclude, I'll ask another very favorite question of mine. But first, I want to tell everybody who's live with us, please leave a heart for my guests in the chat. If you're going to be watching it later in recording, leave a heart under the video because it still matters. And by the way, if you have come here through Mindvalley app, I want to encourage you to actually sign up to Mindvalley Book Club, because we're going to send you reminders and also the recordings of the interviews, something which sometimes gets lost because Mindvalley app has so much information. But for people who are signing up for my book club interviews, we actually send, literally the next day, we send the recording of that very interview. Plus, of course, you'll be getting our weekly updates on which are the latest books that have been published that we think you should pay attention. And by the way, I forgot to say it outright, but it is important to know that my interview is actually with the book of the week by Mindvalley Book Club, because we pick one book that we focus on for the whole week, and there are so many books being published every week. So when we pick a book of the week, it's literally, it's like what we think you should pay attention to the most. So Keith, you are the book of the week of Mindvalley Book Club.
Thank you. One thing I forgot to add. If you go to my website, you can buy the book anywhere, Amazon, etc. But if you go to my website and you want to buy the book for your whole team or your whole company, I created a whole video series helping guide you through the book, every chapter. And that's for free. if you buy for your whole team, if you buy for your company, then make that commitment. Then we give away this free video series. So you just go to keithferrazzi.com, and on that you can see keithferrazzi.com. You can see all of the offers for the free video.
So if I buy a book for Vishen, would you sign it and send it to him?
Yeah, of course. I love Vishen.
That would be fun. I think we should arrange it.
When's he coming to LA? Tell him to give me a call.
May.
All right. Make sure that I'd like to do a dinner party with him when I'm there.
Yeah, by the way, Keith's dinner parties are amazing. I have had a chance to attend one years ago, and it was really, oh my God, it was such a vivid and clear memory, and such a heartwarming experience. Now, the last question that I want to ask, because this is my traditional question, Keith, how would you like your book to change the world?
Well, look, the mission statement of my company is we transform teams to change the world, to transform the world. And, we offer this coaching to organizations that are game-changing in the world. I'm coaching organizations like the World Economic Forum in Davos. I'm coaching the country of Bhutan and its turnaround. I love giving this intellectual property to groups that are changing the world. So that's how it changes the world. I mean, anybody who runs an NGO, a nonprofit of some sort, a game-changing new company, this book will transform the success of your team. And that's how it changes the world. I'm excited about it.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Keith, for joining me. Thank you, everyone who joined me live here. And thank you to those of you who are going to be watching it in recording, because I'm mindful of you guys as well, and very grateful for you actually catching up on our content. And
by the way, I saw a funny joke where somebody said they would fly to LA to be a part of that dinner party. It's interesting. As my online community that's called Connected Success, for graduation, we actually have a dinner party at my home. So there is a chance for you all to join that sometime if you want. Just go to connectedsuccess.com.
So you have a lot of avenues to move on from here.
Yeah, exactly.
So, take one step at a time, but I suggest you get the book right now, because the book just came out. Well, not just, but it came out, and it's a good start. And if you're a part of Mindvalley membership, you can just check out Keith's quest as well. Thank you, Keith, once again. It was a pleasure.
Take care, everybody. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone, and see you again soon. Bye.